In the early morning hours of April 19th, a 275-meter-long container ship was speeding at 17 knots through the darkness in the Gulf of Oman, with a displacement nearly equal to an aircraft carrier, flying the Iranian flag and attempting to break through the U.S. Navy blockade to reach the port of Bandar Abbas. Ahead in the darkness, the destroyer USS Spruance was lying in wait. 6 hours of radio warnings. The Iranian crew did not respond and did not change course. Then 9 5-inch shells were fired directly into the engine room. The massive ship was rendered completely immobile in the middle of the sea. U.S. Marines from a Seahawk helicopter descended onto the deck and took control of the entire crew. The entire operation was broadcast live by U.S. Central Command for the whole world to see, second by second. But that ship was only the tip of the iceberg, because in the same week, Iran had attacked an Indian oil tanker carrying 2 million barrels of Iraqi oil, a ship that Iran itself had previously authorized to pass. Because behind the Tusca incident was a blockade machine with 2 carrier strike groups, 4 layers of control from sea level to airspace, and an artificial intelligence network capable of identifying every Iranian ship by propeller sound, even when the ship had turned off all positioning signals. Because by early May, the U.S. had forced 45 ships to turn back, seized dozens of others, and expanded the blockade globally, not just at Hormuz, but also at the Strait of Malacca, the South China Sea, and off the coast of Malaysia. And because the entire campaign was not designed to strike Iran, it was designed to force Iran to the nuclear negotiation table from the position of a nation suffocating economically, with the rial just hitting a historic low of 1.8 million rials to $1. This is not a story about one ship being captured. This is a story about a trap that was calculated in advance, and Iran just stepped right into the place America wanted. 3 objectives, 1 campaign, and Iran had never seen the full picture until the Tusca ship lay motionless in the Gulf of Oman. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what is happening in Hormuz and why it is more important than any news report you have read today. Let's begin. To understand why the Tusca incident happened, you need to understand the 48 hours before that, because what Iran did in those 48 hours was not tactics. It was a chain of mutually self-destructive strategic mistakes, step by step, until Tehran had no better choice than to watch its ship lie motionless in the Gulf of Oman. Let me show you the context, because context is everything. On February 28, the U.S. and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury, with hundreds of airstrikes targeting Iranian military facilities, nuclear sites, and senior leadership, including Khamenei. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz on March 4 and launched retaliatory missiles and drones across the region. A temporary ceasefire was negotiated on April 7 and 8, but it was the most fragile ceasefire imaginable because right after that, on April 11 and 12 in Islamabad, U.S., Vice President J.D. Vance sat face-to-face with Iranian Parliament Speaker Ghalibaf in the highest-level direct contact between the U.S. and Iran since the 1979 revolution, and the negotiations failed completely. Immediately afterward, Trump announced a naval blockade starting April 13, barring any ships from entering or leaving Iranian ports. That was the context. Now we come to the 48 hours that decided everything. On April 17th, Iran announced it was reopening Hormuz to commercial ships during the ceasefire in Lebanon, a move that looked like a concession but was actually a trap Iran set for itself, because just 1 day later, on April 18th, when the U.S. refused to lift the naval blockade, the IRGC immediately closed Hormuz for the second time and broadcast a chilling message over the radio for all ships in the area to hear: every ship is a target until the blockade is lifted. 20 commercial ships immediately panicked and changed course toward Oman. The IRGC attacked at least 3 oil tankers without any warning. But nothing on April 18 was as strategically devastating as what happened to the Sanmar Herald, an Indian VLCC oil tanker carrying 2 million barrels of Iraqi oil traveling on the exact authorized route, with the captain's name correctly listed in the list Iran had approved for passage. The captain had contacted the Iranian side. His name was on the list, he had been authorized, and he was on the correct route. The cockpit recording from the Sanmar Herald, later sent to tanker trackers, captured the entire chaos when two IRGC fast attack boats appeared and opened fire. No warning, no radio call, no explanation. The container ship CGM Everglade was also attacked by rockets off the coast of Oman on the same day. And then, while all of that was happening at sea, Donald Trump posted a video on Truth Social of Frank Sinatra singing My Way. Military analysts immediately read the message, not because Trump is a Sinatra fan, but because in the public signaling language of this administration, my way meant the campaign had begun. Now let's pause here and look at what Iran had just done, because this was the most serious strategic mistake Tehran could have made in that situation. Iran had itself authorized the Sanmar Herald to pass, then opened fire on the very ship it had authorized. That single action completely destroyed any claim to maritime sovereignty and controlled order that Iran was trying to build. Because if Iran was willing to shoot at a ship it had itself allowed through, then no commitment from Tehran would have any legal or diplomatic value at any negotiation table in the world. Iran had just handed Washington exactly what Washington needed most, not a pretext to attack, but a perfect legal and moral justification to escalate without needing any further excuses. It was not America that initiated the attack. America was forced to respond to the IRGC's action against an authorized civilian vessel, and the whole world has the audio recording to verify it. When the Islamabad negotiations failed and Iran isolated itself with the Sanmar Herald incident in just 48 hours, Trump no longer had any reason to hold back, and America had been ready from the start, just waiting for the exact moment when Iran created the perfect pretext itself. That moment came in the early morning of April 19, and it came in the form of a 275-meter-long container ship speeding at 17 knots through the darkness in the Gulf of Oman. The MV Tusca, flying the Iranian flag, with a displacement nearly equal to an aircraft carrier, and most importantly, listed on the official U.S. Treasury sanctions list for previous illegal activities, was attempting to break through the blockade to reach the port of Bandar Abbas. What the Iranian crew did not know, or knew but deliberately ignored, was that the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer USS Spruance had been lying in wait ahead in the darkness, a warship that had caught another Iranian ship sneaking out of the strait just 5 days earlier, and Spruance had no concept of letting it go. Spruance began issuing radio warnings, then continued some more. For 6 full hours, the U.S. Navy broadcaster's voice rang out steadily on the international frequency, "Motor vessel Tusca, vacate your engine room. We are prepared to subject you to disabling fire." 6 hours, the Iranian crew did not respond, they did not change course, they did not slow down. At 9 a.m., after every diplomatic option had been fully offered and completely rejected, the USS Spruance opened fire. 9 non-explosive 5-inch shells fired directly into the Tusca's engine room with the precision that Fox News later called marksmanship. The 275-meter ship was rendered completely immobile in the middle of the sea. By 4 p.m., U.S. Marines from the USS Tripoli descended onto the Tusca's deck by Seahawk helicopter and detained the entire crew. Donald Trump immediately posted on Truth Social. They had just shot through the ship's engine room, and the cargo inside was being inspected second by second. CENTCOM confirmed this was the first time since the blockade campaign began on April 13 that shots had been fired and a ship had been boarded and controlled. Previously, the U.S. had forced 23 ships to turn back without firing a single round. Now let's pause and ask the truly important question, not what just happened, since CENTCOM already broadcast the whole thing, but why everything was carried out exactly that way. Why was Tusca chosen among dozens of Iranian ships operating in the area? The answer lies in the U.S. Treasury sanctions list. Tusca had been listed for prior illegal activities, meaning the legality of this action was fully secured from day one. Iran could not sue in any international court, could not call on the international community to condemn it, and could not frame this as an arbitrary action by the U.S. Navy. Why use non-explosive shells instead of live rounds? Because America did not need a deadly explosion. America needed an image. A massive ship immobilized in the middle of the sea, Marines descending onto the deck, the crew detained, broadcast live globally. That was the image that 25 to 35 Iranian ship captains still operating in the area needed to see to calculate the risks for their own voyages. Why 6 hours of warnings before firing? Unusually long in a military campaign. Because 6 hours of fully recorded warnings were irrefutable proof of deliberate patience. No government, no human rights organization, no ally or adversary could stand before that recording and say America had acted without justification. And why did CENTCOM broadcast the entire operation in real time, second by second, on its official account? Because this was information warfare running in parallel with the physical campaign. Every second of the Tusca incident was not only designed to capture one ship, but designed to be read by two audiences at once: the crews of the remaining Iranian ships watching their screens, and the IRGC commanders looking at the ship tracking map in the area. The doctrine of catch one, deter 100 was executed with perfect media precision, and that message extended beyond Hormuz, beyond Iran, straight to Beijing and Moscow, where military analysts looking at America's coordinated naval air network realized this was something not easily imitated. As of April 24th, a total of 39 ships had been turned back, boarded, and inspected, or seized since April 13. Tusca was the precedent, but the machine that created that precedent is the real story worth telling. And that machine was built according to an architecture that most of the world has not yet seen in full. From the beginning of April, before the Tusca incident occurred, the Pentagon had quietly woven a control network in the Gulf of Oman, with a density never before seen in these waters for many decades. USS Frank E. Peterson Jr. and USS Michael Murphy, two Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, were the first ships to pass through the strait, establishing forward positions before the main force arrived. Behind them was the USS Gerald R. Ford, the world's largest aircraft carrier with 90 fighter jets on deck, just returning from the Red Sea along with two escort destroyers. At the same time, the USS Abraham Lincoln, the second carrier strike group, deployed in the same waters, creating two massive carrier air bridges lying right under Iran's nose. USS Tripoli carried the entire 31st MEU force, the unit that boarded Tusca. USS Lewis B. Puller, the expeditionary sea base, carried SEAL commandos and an Apache AH-64 squadron. Seahawk MH-60R and MH-60S helicopters stood ready on the deck of every destroyer. In the air, 18 F-35s were transferred directly from RAF Lakenheath in England to the Gulf, the most powerful stealth force in the region. FA-18 Super Hornets and F-35Cs flew from the decks of the two carriers. F-15E Strike Eagles and A-10 Thunderbolt IIs added an additional strike layer. B-52 Stratofortresses conducted regular patrols. P-8 Poseidons and MQ-4C Tritons operated continuously over the airspace. E-3 Sentry AWACS tracked every movement in the air. E-11 BACN coordinated all battlefield communications through a single network. KC-135Rs and KC-46As provided continuous aerial refueling to the extent that, according to Flight Radar 24 data on April 18th, the most tracked aircraft across all of Europe and the Middle East were American tankers, and in those 48 hours, at least 8 C-17 Globemaster flights entered the area, and 6 flights departed, a historic level never before recorded. Bloomberg and the New York Post called this a new phase of naval blockade extending beyond the Middle East, but listing weapon names says nothing. What matters is understanding why each layer in this machine exists and what problem it solves, because this is not a random collection of forces. This is a 4-layer architecture designed to eliminate each of Iran's options one by one. The first layer is detection, and this is the layer that determines all the others. Task Force 59 integrates artificial intelligence with data from MQ-4C Tritons and P-8 Poseidons to identify every ship in the area through 3 independent parameters: propeller sound, thermal signature, and hull profile. Any ship that turns off its AIS signal within a 5 nautical mile radius is automatically flagged red and tracked immediately. How important is this? Iran's strategy of smuggling oil and weapons over many years was built on one single assumption, that changing flags and turning off transponders would be enough to become invisible. Task Force 59 completely neutralized that assumption. The Gulf of Oman is no longer a sea, it is a digital fingerprint scanner, and every Iranian ship is leaving fingerprints even when it thinks it is invisible. The second layer is surface control, and this is the most sophisticated layered escalation layer in the entire campaign. VBSS teams on each destroyer handle ships that agree to turn back. The 31st MEU from USS Tripoli handles resistant ships like Tusca. SEAL commandos handle high-value intelligence targets. Seahawk MH-60R and MH-60S helicopters insert troops from the air within minutes when needed. Every level of Iranian resistance has exactly one U.S. unit specifically designed to handle it. No excess, no shortage, no gaps for Iran to exploit. The third layer is asymmetric deterrence, and this is the layer designed to handle the threat that outsiders pay the least attention to. Apache AH-64s from USS Louis B. Puller fly direct patrols against swarms of IRGC fast attack boats. Why Apaches? Because SM-2 missiles on destroyers, although extremely effective against aircraft and high-altitude missiles, are not designed to handle dozens of small, fast boats at close range in confined waters, and that is exactly the swarm tactic the IRGC has practiced for decades. The Apaches fill exactly that gap, flying low, maneuvering, and able to destroy individual fast attack boats before the swarm can form enough to overwhelm the defense systems. The fourth layer is the airspace umbrella and strategic deterrence, and this is the layer Iran cannot respond to. FA-18s and F-35Cs from the two carriers ensure no Iranian aircraft can escalate the situation from the air. The 18 F-35As from RAF Lakenheath are the most powerful stealth force in the region, designed to break the radar chains and air defense systems that Iran would need if it wanted to protect onshore targets. And the B-52 Stratofortress, the strategic bomber capable of carrying nuclear weapons, flies regular patrols without dropping a single bomb to send the clearest possible message: if Iran escalates, Tehran's infrastructure is the next target. There is one final tactical detail that most analyses overlook: why the U.S. chose to conduct boardings in the Gulf of Oman and open waters instead of in the narrow 33-kilometer-wide Strait of Hormuz. The answer is not random. In the narrow strait, IRGC fast attack boats and coastal missile batteries can respond within minutes, creating a situation where any small incident could escalate uncontrollably. In open waters, U.S. destroyers have 360-degree radar, maximum firing range, and no terrain to shield Iranian boats approaching. This location choice not only preserves U.S. forces, it completely eliminates the pretext Iran needs to turn a ship capture into a larger military incident. These four layers were not built to strike Iran, they were built to ensure that none of Iran's options remain cheap enough to execute, militarily, legally, or diplomatically. But if it was only to blockade oil, why did America need all of this? The answer begins with a Wall Street Journal report confirming that the Pentagon is not only blockading Hormuz, but has launched a campaign to hunt down all Iran-related ships in international waters, with no geographic limits. As of May 1st, the U.S. had forced 45 commercial ships to turn back or return to port. Iran exports 1.5 to 2 million barrels of oil per day, mostly through Hormuz to China, the country that received 14% of its oil imports from Iran last year, mainly through shadow fleet tankers. If the blockade reaches full capacity, 80 to 90% of that oil revenue is cut off immediately, with losses from $300 to $500 million per day. The ports of Karg Island, Bandar Abbas, Chabahar, and Asaluya are congested with dozens of oil-laden ships that have no way out. And the Iranian rial has just hit a historic low of 1.8 million rials to $1, dropping 15% in just 2 days. Those numbers make it look like this is an economic campaign. But this is not an economic campaign. This is 3 simultaneous mutually reinforcing strikes, and the economy is only the first of them. The first strike is economic, but not in the simple sense that news reports usually present. 90% of Iran's economy depends on maritime trade. Cutting off Hormuz does not just cut oil revenue, it cuts Tehran's ability to maintain defense spending, to maintain the domestic food and fuel subsidy system that the Iranian government uses to keep social stability, and to maintain the internal political support of a regime already facing the largest wave of protests since the 1979 revolution. The rial's collapse is not the cause of the crisis. It is a symptom of an economy being squeezed from the outside while bleeding from the inside. Bloomberg called this a controlled heart attack, strong enough to cause immediate pain, precise enough not to trigger a desperate reaction. The second strike is proxy, and this is the strike that most public analyses have completely overlooked. Shipping routes through Hormuz do not only carry oil. For many years, on those same ships and along those same routes, Iran has transported ballistic missile components, Shahed drone engines, and cruise missile parts to the Houthis in Yemen and Hezbollah in Lebanon. The entire proxy network that Iran built over 3 decades, what Tehran calls the axis of resistance, has been nurtured through precisely those maritime routes that America is now blockading. And according to the White House, more than 85% of Iran's defense industrial base has been destroyed in Operation Epic Fury, including most of the ballistic missile and long-range attack drone stockpiles, meaning Iran has not only lost the ability to produce new weapons, but the Hormuz blockade also cuts off the remaining ability to transfer what is left to its proxy forces. The Houthis receive no replacement components. Hezbollah receives no additional ammunition. The entire axis of resistance is starving for weapons at the root, without needing any attack on Yemen or Lebanon. The third strike is nuclear negotiations, and this is the strike the entire campaign was designed to lead to. The first round of negotiations in Islamabad on April 11 and 12 between J.D. Vance and Galebov failed completely. Iran initially refused even to sit down for a second round through Pakistani intermediaries. Then the Tusca incident happened. Then Trump posted on Truth Social, "We are offering a very fair deal. If they do not accept it, America will destroy every power plant and every bridge in Iran. No more good guys." Within 24 hours of that statement, Tehran reversed its decision. The second round of negotiations was convened with a U.S. delegation including Vice President Vance, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner. The Hormuz blockade is not the final objective of this campaign. It is the lever designed to force Iran to the nuclear negotiation table from the position of a nation suffocating economically, gradually losing military capability, and no longer able to sustain its proxy network. And there is one final dimension that most of the world has not yet fully seen, the global dimension of this campaign. On the night of April 25th, U.S. forces boarded and inspected the stateless oil tanker MC Tiffany, not in Hormuz, not in the Gulf of Oman, but in the area of operations of Indo-Pacific Command, halfway around the world from the strait. That ship had loaded oil from Karg Island before the blockade took effect, and was still intercepted. CENTCOM coordinated with Indo-Pacific Command to track Iranian ships in the Strait of Malacca, the South China Sea, and off the coast of Malaysia. Hegseth stated bluntly, "The blockade is expanding globally. There are no bypass routes. There are no alternative lines. Even if a ship escapes Hormuz, it can still be stopped halfway around the world later, and Iran knows it. These 3 strikes do not run independently. They are designed to reinforce each other according to a single logic. A weakened economy starves the proxies. Lost proxy support increases negotiation leverage. Increased negotiation leverage makes the nuclear pressure unbearable. This is a comprehensive pressure architecture, not to destroy Iran, but to force Iran into an agreement from a position with no choices left. But this campaign is not without risks. Iran is not an opponent without cards, and those cards are being placed on the table. On April 23rd, the IRGC attacked 3 commercial ships in Hormuz, seized 2 ships, and escorted them to the Iranian shore right after Trump announced extending the ceasefire indefinitely, a clear message that Tehran still has the ability to act and has no intention of sitting still while being squeezed. And to understand why that message still carries weight, you need to look at what Iran really has in hand. More than 5,000 naval mines, most activated by the magnetic signature of ship hulls, more than 180 fast attack boats armed with missiles and rockets, more than 20 Qadir-class submarines designed to operate in shallow waters, coastal Noor and Kosar missile batteries with a 200-kilometer range, hidden in caves, mountain passes, and civilian facilities, according to shoot and scoot doctrine. And stockpiles of Shahed and Mohajer drones with a production cost of about $20,000 each, while an American SM-2 interceptor missile costs $2 million apiece. This is not the arsenal of a country that can be ignored. But each of those cards is facing a specific counterlayer in America's blockade architecture, though not every card has been completely neutralized, and that is precisely the key point that needs to be clearly understood. Naval mines are the most real threat, not because Iran has the most, but because this is the hardest card to counter in confined waters. Brookings, CSIS, and the Hudson Institute have all concluded that Iran's combined mine and swarm strategy has exposed the real limits of air power in narrow seas. No naval formation, no matter how modern, can be completely immune to a minefield sown in the right position. American unmanned mine countermeasures vehicles are operating continuously underwater, but even detecting a single mine can paralyze the operations of a destroyer for many hours, change routes, and create gaps in the surface control layer. Fast attack craft swarms are the second card, and this is the card designed not to sink American ships, but to overload defense systems. More than 180 fast attack boats attacking simultaneously from multiple directions can saturate radar and force CIWS systems to handle more targets than they were designed for. Apache AH-64s and CIWS systems, firing 4,500 rounds per minute, have been deployed to counter them, but facing 30 simultaneous maneuvering targets in confined waters is still an equation without a perfect solution, and both sides know it. The Ghadir submarines are the third card, and this is the least mentioned but most concerning card in the naval intelligence community. More than 20 Ghadir-class submarines are designed to operate in the shallow waters of the strait, where many conventional sonar systems lose effectiveness due to seabed terrain noise. P-8 Poseidons fly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for this very reason, but the shallow waters of Hormuz remain the most unfavorable anti-submarine warfare environment imaginable for any navy in the world. The coastal Noor and Kosar missiles are the fourth card, and this is the card that F-35s are designed to handle by breaking the guidance radar chain before the missiles are launched. But when those missile batteries are hidden in caves, behind mountain passes, and inside or next to civilian facilities, attacking them is no longer a technical problem. It becomes a legal and political problem with no simple answer, and Tehran knows exactly that when choosing the locations for these missile batteries. The Shahed drone swarm is the final card, and this is the card that creates the most severe cost asymmetry. $20,000 per Shahed versus $2 million per SM-2 means Iran can launch hundreds of drones at a fraction of the cost of America's interceptors. That is exactly why the Pentagon has secretly transferred defensive laser weapon systems to the Gulf under a classified program, because lasers cost dollars per shot, not millions, and that is the only solution that can reverse the cost asymmetry Iran had calculated in advance. And so no one thinks those cards are just theoretical. 14 American service members have been killed since Operation Epic Fury began. 6 died in an Iranian drone attack in Kuwait, 6 died in a KC-135 crash, 1 died from wounds in an attack at Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. Iran is not a harmless opponent, and anyone who tells you this campaign has no real price is not being honest with you. But here is the most important thing to understand about all those cards. Iran's asymmetric strategy was designed for a single ambush, one surprise strike that could cause enough damage to force America to recalculate. It was not designed for a war of attrition lasting many weeks while the economy collapses, the currency loses 15% of its value in 2 days, and the ports are congested with oil that has no way out. America did not walk into the ambush trap. America is draining the water from that trap day by day. On the morning of April 19th, the same day the Tusca incident occurred, 2 C-17 Globemasters landed at Nourian Airport near Islamabad. Not a quiet landing in the middle of the night, not a small diplomatic delegation arriving discreetly through the back door. The world's 2 largest military transport aircraft landed in broad daylight, and immediately the roads from the airport into the city were completely sealed off. The Serena and Marriott hotels, the two most iconic hotels in Islamabad, evicted all current guests and stopped accepting new bookings until Friday. Security was tightened across all of Rawalpindi and Islamabad, with many roads closed without prior notice. The whole world saw it, and that was exactly America's intention, because if Washington wanted secret negotiations, they had dozens of diplomatic channels that would leave no trace. The public landing of the C-17s was not a security oversight. It was a meticulously calculated message sent simultaneously to Tehran, to Beijing, to Moscow, and to the entire world watching. America is offering Iran an exit, and that exit is wide open for everyone to see. Tehran must choose between making concessions at the negotiating table while the whole world knows, or continuing to lose ships at sea while the whole world also knows. Neither option is comfortable for Iran, but one is significantly less painful than the other. Why Pakistan as the intermediary? Because Islamabad is one of the rare countries in the world that maintains substantive communication channels with both Washington and Tehran without being seen as belonging to either side, creating diplomatic space where both sides can sit down without anyone having to publicly declare they are making concessions before negotiations even begin. The first round on April 11 and 12 between J.D. Vance and Ghalibaf failed. Iran initially refused even to sit for the second round. Then Tusca happened, then Trump posted the "No More Good Guys" statement, and within 24 hours Tehran reversed its decision. But then Iran's state news agency IRNA reported that the government was refusing to join the negotiations again, then accepted again, then sent signals of doubt. That constant wavering was not deliberate negotiation tactics. It was a sign of an intense internal power struggle underway between the pragmatic faction wanting an exit and the hardline faction refusing any deal that looks like surrender. And this is exactly the sign that the pressure is working, because when a government is unified and confident, it does not waver like this in front of a negotiating table. Pakistan, meanwhile, stated that it would continue efforts to maintain peace, even while admitting that the country's economic development journey has been completely stalled because of this crisis, a rare admission showing that the geopolitical cost of Hormuz does not stop at the borders of Iran or America. Hormuz and Islamabad are not two parallel stories. They are two sides of the same strategy designed to run simultaneously. Military pressure creates leverage, leverage creates negotiation conditions, and every ship seized in the Gulf of Oman is another card placed on the table in Islamabad. These two fronts are not separate, they are one. And the only question left is which scenario will happen next. There are three possibilities, and they do not carry equal weight. The most likely possibility is that Iran makes concessions and negotiations succeed. This is not an optimistic prediction. This is the scenario the entire architecture of this campaign was designed to lead to, and there is concrete evidence that it is moving in that direction. Iran has agreed to a ceasefire after 38 days of the campaign and announced the reopening of Hormuz, but the final terms regarding control of the strait and the nuclear program remain unresolved, and that is where the real war is taking place, not at sea, but at the negotiating table. The economic pressure from the blockade, the Tusca precedent, the rial collapsing to 1.8 million to $1, and 45 ships forced to turn back are creating an accumulating weight that Tehran finds increasingly difficult to endure with each passing day. If the pragmatic faction inside Iran wins that internal struggle, this scenario will become reality, and this is an ending that both sides can live with. The medium possibility is controlled escalation that drags on in a state of dual blockade, both sides blockading each other, neither side winning clearly, neither side escalating to the point of no return. Iran has stated bluntly that any foreign armed forces entering Hormuz will be attacked. The IRGC continues to seize commercial ships to send a domestic message that Tehran is not submitting. America continues to expand the global blockade and increase the number of ships intercepted. Both sides maintain a threshold below full-scale war because neither benefits from crossing that threshold. But in this scenario, global oil prices continue to rise, oil-dependent Asian economies face increasing pressure, and Hormuz becomes a chronic geopolitical flashpoint with no clear resolution timeline. This is the worst scenario for the world, not because it is the most violent, but because it lasts the longest and causes the widest collateral damage beyond the region. The least likely but highest consequence possibility is total breakdown, and this is a scenario neither side wants, but neither side can completely rule out. Brent crude has surpassed $120 per barrel, the largest oil supply disruption in global energy market history since the 1970s. If Iran decides to completely close Hormuz by widely sowing naval mines or sinking ships to block maritime traffic, America will have no choice but large-scale military intervention to sweep the mines and reopen the strait by force, a campaign that the Pentagon has admitted to Congress could take many months even after the war ends, and would bring uncontrollable global consequences on energy markets, supply chains, and the geopolitical stability of the entire Asian region. No one knows which scenario will occur, and anyone who tells you they know for sure is not being honest. But here is what is certain. Hormuz is no longer just a strait. It is a chessboard where every move is being read by the whole world as a declaration about power, about limits, about will, and about the question of who truly controls the energy lifeline of the modern world. Iran understands that. America knows Iran understands. And that is exactly why every shot fired, every ship seized, every C-17 landing in Islamabad is being broadcast live for the whole world to see. If this video has helped you understand more clearly what is really happening in Hormuz, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next analyses, because this chess game is not over yet, and we will continue to follow every move together. Thank you for watching until the end. See you in the next video.